Hey, welcome back to Divinely Uninspired, episode 10. We did it. We made it to double digits. People thought we weren't going to succeed. I mean, maybe that was just me that thought we wouldn't succeed. But here today with Jeremy, as always. Jeremy, what's up?
Hey, glad to be here today.
And also joining us, Penny. Penny, glad you're back with us.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Good. We're glad to have you. We are going to talk about some stuff here, but before we do anything else, we need to share what we're thankful for because it's Thanksgiving week. And I always hated this part of the Thanksgiving meal where everybody stands in a circle and shares the things they're grateful for, because after the first three people, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Because everybody says
family, friends,
health,
food,
Jesus. Yeah. So anything in particular you're thankful for that's not the traditional thankfulness for things? I don't know.
Buffalo wings.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think Buffalo, New York, and be thankful for Buffalo, New York, where Buffalo wings were created.
I can get behind that. I wish the Buffalo quarterback would quit playing terrible because he's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, he's kind of stinking.
He's not good this year. What about you, Penny? Anything special?
You know what? I'm naturally sarcastic. So usually for Thanksgiving, when we go around the table and we give something, I always do something really off the wall. Like, the Apple alarm, like how aggressive it is in the morning. I'm just so thankful for the jolt into the land of the living in the morning. And everyone gets really aggravated with me, but that's all right. So.
Yeah, you want it to do the thing where it ascends, right? Where it gets gets louder over time.
So we've tried that in our house, and it does not work. I'll be hitting somebody trying to get them to. It'll be really, really loud. I'm a very heavy sleeper.
I do want to say that on Sunday I talked about how I thought that Thanksgiving was like an underrated holiday or whatever, because I do think it's a big holiday. But then I also kind of am torn because part of my family is Native American, and so it can be a conflicting thing kind of for me sometimes, and so thankful for letting us take the country.
Yeah, what is this the correct terminology? Tribe did your family?
Cherokee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1/16th?
I don't remember. My grandpa was like 1/4. So I got it in me.
Yeah.
I do too. I've got some, a little bit.
I do not. I think I'm the waspiest person you've ever met in your life. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Oh, the thing I am thankful for is this podcast and all you listeners. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're listening to Divinely Uninspired, podcast by Journey Church Shepherdsville, hosted by Jeremy Willis and me, Rusty Wilson. You can find us online at journeyshepherdsville.com. For questions or comments, email podcast@journeyshepherdsville.com. Maybe we'll feature your question or comment on a future episode. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. So I want to start out today by talking about the millennial generation's version of Celine Dion, and that's Adele. And that's she's been in the news recently. I don't know, are you all Adele fans?
I love Adele.
I love Adele.
I
Yes.
really didn't think I would, and I'm going to tell you this, and this is in confidence, so let it leave the room.
Okay, well, I'm going to mute you right now.
Yeah,
I'm
so
muting him.
when I'm working out, sometimes my jam that gets me motivated is someone like you, because they're like, there's this part where it builds, and then it gets so that's a really embarrassing thing. But I love Adele. I think her voice is awesome.
Well, just remember that I muted that, so nobody heard that confession. So.
That's funny.
What about you, Penny? Are you an Adele fan?
Man, Adele is the whole package vocally. She's amazing. She can write some serious lyrics. I have no complaints with her. Love her as an artist.
Yeah. Well, she is very talented, but she was in the news here recently. She had a big interview with future President Oprah Winfrey, and she talked about her marriage. And she's been with the same guy for quite some time, and was divorced back just a couple of years ago before she started on the album, which is called 30. So I guess she does one every 5 years, and it's just her age at the time.
She's only 30?
Yes.
I would have thought she was older than me.
Well, she
don't even know why.
I'm not gonna comment further on that because we're just not. But so she made these interesting statements when she was being interviewed by Oprah about why she got divorced, and the long and short of it was that, and you can look up her exact comments, but kind of the long story short version was, well, we fell out of that romantic love. And it just wasn't It wasn't exciting anymore. You know, they have a child together, and I don't know. I kind of think that that's just marriage. The romance is gone pretty quickly. It feels like.
Well, I don't think it's gone. I think it changes. I think that it definitely. Here's the thing. I always tell people when I do premarital counseling, when you're dating somebody, you know flaws exist, you just don't see them. Do you know what I'm saying? Or you choose not to see them. And I said, when you get married, there is that honeymoon period. And then like a year into it, you're like, who is this? And what did I just do? And sometimes it don't even last a year. I mean, sometimes it's 2 weeks in. But regardless, it is definitely one of those things where I don't think the romance ends. I think it does change. I think that's
true.
I think that the other thing is that because of pop songs, and Adele's guilty as anything. I think to her divorce, like, you know, I don't think artists have to suffer or else they're not gonna be able to produce something great. And so like her going through this is what's inspired this album that's probably gonna be awesome.
Her suffering is good for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, really, think about that. Like some of the greatest artists, their greatest songs and even like art itself comes out of suffering.
Taylor Swift, she's like that too.
Yeah. She is. And she just dropped her Red album like a couple of weeks ago.
I'm a Swiftie.
Are you?
Taylor, yeah.
I'm not.
I am also a Swiftie. So Jeremy, but I'm going to mute that because I don't want people to know that.
That's
Jeremy,
all right. Join the club.
Jeremy likes
I like
Adele.
Kanye West, so I just anti Taylor.
Is that a joke? Because I actually really do like Kanye.
Don't they have like a feud going on or something?
They squashed that, but so that
can't keep up with all these squashings.
So she won an award years ago, and he like rushed the stage to say that she didn't deserve to win it, and somebody else did. And so when we were at the Commerce Chamber of Commerce award ceremony, I said if we didn't win, I was going to Kanye the stage, and we didn't win.
We didn't win, but you didn't do it.
But I didn't Kanye the stage either.
I should have though.
I was laughing too hard that we lost.
Yeah,
but
I do think that it changes, and I think people just aren't ready for that. I mean, I think that I think my love for my wife has evolved over the years. It goes from one level. I mean, I don't get into it, but it goes from one level of love to eventually you get married, you start a life together, you appreciate things. Then obviously she's the mother of my children, which then changed the love that I have for her, and so I think it just evolves, and you have to know it's going to be like that. I think the other thing that I always find, and I don't want to get into a whole counseling session, whenever I do counseling though, people, I always ask them, the romance changed, but sometimes I'll say like, when was the last time you went on a date with your spouse? And people will look at each other and say, oh, well, the kids are 6 now, so like 5 years. And I'm like, well, there's part of your problem is you're not dating each other. I said, when's the last time you took a trip together, or a vacation, not a trip? A trip is when you take your kids. A vacation is when you're kid free.
Right.
And so like, and I think that's part of it is we often, it can become so easy to become glorified roommates, or just our identity as the parents of these children. And so maybe Adele needs to come in for a counseling session.
Maybe so.
There's a couple of things that really hurt my heart about this. For one, that she felt she needed to tell people why she was getting a divorce. Like that's really terrible. I feel bad for her. And another thing, to have to tell somebody that you're not in love with them anymore. Like that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
For them and for her, really.
That's got to be one of the most painful things a person can experience.
And if you really listen to her new song, have you listened to her new song that came out? What's it called? Easy on Me, right? Go easy on me, something like that. Well, it's really about how she's young and was making bad decisions because she was young, and just go easy on me because I'm trying to rebrand myself or go into something new, and I'm like, okay, I get that, but I got married young. We've been married for 15 years, and let me tell you something: marriage is work. It's hard sometimes, and sometimes you look at your spouse like, I'm gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
I will say though, the blow of somebody telling you they don't love you as much. I mean, first of all, it's got to be really painful. Not only they tell you that, but then they make an album about it.
Oh,
that's got to hurt a lot. Unless you get a kickback, like if he gets, some royalties off that song because it's kind of about him, wasn't he like her producer? I have no idea.
I don't know. I mean,
good for him.
Okay. So when I say I like Adele, I like someone like you. So that's
what about I like Rolling in the Deep.
Hello. I didn't like that. Hello. I like Hello. Yeah. And I like someone like you. Those are some of my jams, but I know she's British. That's about the extent of my Adele knowledge.
Oh, I thought maybe like,
I do like her.
We're Swifties and you're Adele or something. I don't know.
No.
Okay. All right. So, anyway,
we need to move on.
Yeah, we need to get off of this. So I don't know if you all saw this in the news, but Egypt, I do not ever want to visit Egypt under any circumstance because they had some modern day plagues that struck here recently. Plague strike Egypt, sudden floods, then 4-inch scorpions called, get this, death stalkers. So these scorpions, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of these things that were flooded out of their burrows, and they stung over 500 people, and like 5 people died. I don't know.
I don't know if I'm gonna call it a plague if only 5 people died.
Right.
I think.
Well, yeah, I guess it's. I think it's like the biblical plagues of Egypt.
I think 5 people die a year going bowling. So I don't think we're gonna call like.
How does that happen?
They get their arm stuck in the ball return.
Oh, well, that's stupid.
There was an article came out years ago.
Why
I need
would
to
you
find
just
it out.
lose your arm?
There's an article came out years ago, and it was like all these statistics. It was during Shark Week, and it was talking about how we think sharks are so dangerous, and how few people actually get killed by sharks. And it was like this long article about all of the other things that people die from that are stupid, and bowling injuries was on there. It was like 20 people a year die either at bowling alleys or getting their hands stuck in the thing and they bleed out, or so that's more of a plague than 5 people getting stung by scorpions.
We just went through a pandemic. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. Why are we talking about scorpions?
Because they're called death stalkers. You guys, I don't think you guys are taking this serious. Well, I took those serious too. So when I was a kid, I just always assumed that scorpions were going to be a real problem in my life because that was that and quicksand. I know that Bergazzi talks about that, but I always thought that scorpions were going to be very prevalent. And I didn't realize that we didn't really have them in Kentucky.
Well, we do. They're real small though. We have scorpions in Kentucky. They're tiny. Really? It's out west. You have to be worried about those scorpions.
They're not venomous here. They're just.
We do have scorpions, but they're real tiny and they're not very dangerous.
Yeah.
All I know is Egypt. I'm sorry for you, but this is what it says. It said that first came the lightning that strobe lit the Nile skies, a pale purpley gray. What happened next checked off all the boxes for a fierce storm, heavy rain, thunder, flash flooding that sent people scurrying for dry land and crumbled mud brick houses around Aswan, the largest city in southern Egypt. Then came the scorpions. Like that, just to me, that sounds like...
There's probably a logical reason. Like the storms came, the scorpions' houses got washed away, so they had to go somewhere, so they went into the village. I'm explaining it all, man. This is a plague.
I agree that there's an explanation for it, but we could get into we're not going to today. But
I'm just kidding. We're not getting into the biblical plague thing.
Well, not today.
We
we'll
should,
do that
though. That
day.
sounds great.
It is fun, and Jeremy will ruin Exodus for everybody. But I think you're onto it because when we lived in the Dominican Republic, we were during monsoon season. We had this street dog that we kind of adopted, and her name was Toot Toot. Lorelai named her that after something in the movie Zootopia. And so this dog never barked. And we were inside and she was outside, and all of a sudden we just hear her yipping uncontrollably. And it's like she never barks. There must be somebody out there or whatever. So we go out there and open the door, and there is an enormous tarantula. I mean, huge, standing. She has cornered it, and it's up on its back legs or whatever. And I very quickly went and got a broom and killed it.
They're awesome. You shouldn't kill tarantulas.
No. I have to. It would if a spider gets near me, it's dead.
So the dog was on its back legs, or like maybe the spider was gonna.
I think it was a spider. Yeah, Tutu. She wasn't very smart. She would like eat bees and get her face would bubble up or whatever. So she wasn't a very smart dog. But yeah, no. If I see an arachnid of any kind around me, it's dead.
So when I was in high school, actually, he comes to our church, Mr. Weedmar. He was my science teacher, one of my favorite teachers. And when we were in the middle of taking tests, he had tarantulas, and he would just let them loose on the table. So as you're taking a test, a tarantula would just walk across like your paper and on your arms and stuff. And they were awesome. Like you could pick them up. Like I know they're spiders, but they really weren't. They never bit anybody. They were actually super friendly. You could like pet them and stuff. Like they were pretty cool.
You would get arrested for something like that now.
I would
Could you
arrest
imagine
you.
like high school teacher letting spiders and stuff out in the classroom?
I would citizens arrest Mr. Weedmar if he did that and I was in his classroom.
That's so crazy.
I do not like spiders.
I thought it was awesome.
Not me.
No, hard pass.
I'm a sissy, I guess, because I just do not like bugs. And now, so if that weren't bad enough, I've got one more terrifying news story for the day. And this one is strap in if you like parasites. Dead tapeworm in man's brain caused him to speak gibberish and have seizures. A 38-year-old man in Boston went to the hospital with unexplainable seizures. It turned out he had been living with a dead tapeworm in his brain for 20 years.
Ew.
20 years. This guy, he was, and Jeremy, this hits a little close to home for us. He was from Guatemala and came to the United States. So in Guatemala, the particular parasite that he had was fairly common. It was a pork tapeworm. So I guess from undercooked pork. And it was calcified in his brain, and he lived with it for 20. There is nothing. I would take the Mr. Weedmar's tarantulas.
Oh yeah, I mean you at least can see that. It's the stuff you can't see that to me is more dangerous. Parasites and all that stuff is crazy.
I didn't even know that tapeworms could get in your brain. I thought they just stuck around in your gut.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. How'd they get it out?
So they had to surgically remove it because it was calcified. They looked like lesions when they did the CAT scan on his head. And no. So I don't know what's worse, that it had been there for 20 years or that it had been there dead for 15 years. I mean, I guess dead is better than alive, but
I mean, it is crazy when you think about this, especially if you're from a science background and all of the organisms that live inside of us, it's insane. All of the things that actually live inside of our bodies, and we just don't think about it, but there's all these bacteria and parasites and stuff. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, but there's all these things that are inside of our body. And this is a crazy story for sure.
Yeah. This poor, but he's fine now. He hasn't had a seizure and he's not speaking gibberish.
I mean, when did the seizures and gibberish start? Why weren't they looking at the brain 10 years ago?
Well, because the lesions from the calcified parasite were getting worse, and that's what caused it. So, he could have. So, what makes me concerned is do I have something living in me that I'm just not sure is there?
Wasn't there a show one time where they were trying to lose weight, so they ate tapeworms?
That was The Office.
Yes.
Yeah. Where Kelly is trying to lose. They're doing the weight loss challenge, and she says, that Creed gave her a tapeworm.
I remember they did that. So you can eat a tapeworm, eat all the food you want, and you'd still lose weight. Where's the downside?
Well, so I don't know if this is actually true, but I watched one of those CSI shows or whatever, and they
it's all true.
Did you just say you watched? You're going to tell us some facts based on a CSI show?
Yes, and so but because those shows are based on science, and so the person, the corpse was laying there, and their the mouth is just wide open because that's what dead people's mouths do, I guess, and they all of a sudden one of them's eating a sandwich during the autopsy, and this tapeworm starts wiggling out of the open corpse's mouth, and they're like, oh, well, that makes sense because it would be starving, and so I don't know if that's true. I want somebody to fact check that for me.
I'll tell you the truth. I watched one episode of CSI years ago, and I've never even had an inkling to watch that show again. It was a David Duchovny, what I'm talking about? Yeah. He just something about that guy was just no, I'm not watching this show.
Is David Duchovny, he was in that? I thought that was the guy from X-Files.
I don't know. This is how much I was invested in it. Just
I think
Adele.
You're right. I think it is the guy from...
No, it was okay. Then what's the redheaded guy? He was the
CSI, the guy from CSI Miami.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Who would take his glasses off?
Yeah, and he would say some real catchy line. Yeah,
cheesy.
That's who I'm talking. His name's David something too, is it not? David.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I'm about as invested as I am in Adele at this point.
Yeah,
so.
Right. One song.
Yeah,
one
two
song
songs. Hello, and someone like you.
So anyway, there's a show that's on Sci-Fi Channel. Well, it's not Sci-Fi because it's real. Discovery Channel or something called Monsters Inside Me.
Did you say it's on Discovery, so it's real?
Yes.
There's a lot of shows on Discovery.
Oak Island isn't on
The Curse
Discovery.
for Oak Island. Oh, I told him about that in Chicago.
Yeah, you did.
I got sucked into that
you
hard.
Do. You will.
And every episode is and then next week they're going to uncover this thing. And they never uncover anything worth watching at all. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. And I mean, these people have these horror stories about the parasites that they have had. This one guy talks about, he was watching TV and his eye was bothering him and he kept scratching at it. And so he went to the bathroom to see if there was something in there. And he watched as a little worm crawled across his eye.
Gross.
And it's just that stuff. I'm sure people are.
Did you ever watch the show Dr. Pimple Popper?
I
that's
can't.
my favorite.
I can't.
So there's an episode where there's like a spin-off thing, and there's an episode where they showed a preview for this, and it's not the same thing. They pulled a worm out of a guy's eyeball, and you could see it moving, and they take these tweezers and literally pull it out, and it's like this worm. Like it was awesome.
Gross.
Awesome.
No. I'm calling it quits on this.
It was awesome.
People are probably crashing their cars right now.
Nightmares tonight.
Screaming at their stereo.
That stuff is so fascinating to me. I know people think it's gross, but that's like, it's fascinating.
My wife loves the pimple popper stuff where they, have a cyst that they remove. And I just can't do it. I'm just.
Oh, I love it. I love watching
like
it.
old movies and stuff where they used to show like when they did surgeries on people and they had like the gallery you could watch them from. There's a Seinfeld episode with the Junior Mints where Kramer gets
that's
the
right.
Junior Mint. Anyway, but yeah, like I would love to do that. Like sit there and just watch surgeries. Like that stuff just fascinates
Didn't they
me.
used to have that on PBS where they would do
autopsies?
Is that what it was? And they would
Yeah.
have the camera. People are gross.
People are curious.
I guess
Rusty.
morbidly curious. I mean, I'm just as bad as everybody else because here I am reading the article and telling you about it. So
I like too how you started this with, did you see in the news? And you're pulling the most obscure, weirdest news stories as if like, as if like Nightline is leading with this story about the tapeworm.
No, because nobody was murdered, but it's under the tab news on Live Science. Or Live Science.
It is fascinating. I'll give you that. But you said it like, did you see it in the news? It seems like this is the stuff we see.
It was. Dan Rather did a story on it.
Yeah.
He came out of retirement to do this story. Okay. So I have an interesting topic that we're going to ask Jeremy about today because I think it's one that a lot of people have lots of thoughts about. And that is the devil. What's the deal with the devil? Is the devil a real being? Is it an individual being? Is it just like king of all the demons or whatever? So let's ask Jeremy.
What does Jeremy think?
Well, the devil is interesting. We don't actually know that much about the devil. And even from a biblical standpoint, there's really not a whole lot in there. There's a lot of references to the devil, but there's not a lot of facts about the devil. There really just isn't. I mean, there's not a lot of information. I think most people, obviously, the stereotypical when they think of the devil, they think of like the horns and the pitchfork and all that. And I know they think of that like comically, like, the old Bugs Bunny cartoon where it'd pop up on his shoulder. But even people that think beyond that, they just think of scarier versions of that, like dragons and demons and all this stuff. Almost everything that we think about the devil when it comes to what he looks like comes from art, and especially the book Dante's Inferno. Very little of it actually comes from the Bible itself. And so I always think it's fascinating, our obsession with the devil, because we really just don't know that much about the devil. There's not a lot of stuff in there about him. I do think one of the interesting things, I know you said, is the devil real? I do think the devil is real, but I think we have a misunderstanding of what the devil is. I think the devil we often use as a scapegoat, like to blame things on, like the devil made me do it. And it's like, well, first of all, the devil can't make you do anything if he exists in the form of the way we think of. He's always tempting to do that. The other thing is we only actually have two examples of the devil actually tempting anybody. And the first one is Adam and the second one is Jesus. There's no other references in the Bible to the devil actually, like talks about like the enemy prowls on us and stuff like that, but there's no actual physical examples other than Adam and Jesus, who, depending on your theology, Jesus becomes the new Adam. But anyway, so there is that. That's kind of fascinating to me. There's only really two major references to the devil, like tempting people. And so sometimes I think we use the devil as a scapegoat for stuff we already want to do. And or we're just struggling with something, so we feel this temptation. And so there is a lot written about the devil, but a lot of the stuff written about the devil, the source isn't the Bible itself. So there's a lot of that stuff you have to take with a grain of salt. And so I think that's where a lot of people get misconstrued about the devil, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So do you think that the devil tempts us individually? Do you think we're important enough that
So, I mean, one of my favorite writings about not the devil himself, but just that idea is Screw Tape Letters, which is C.S. Lewis books, one of the most fascinating books. And in it, and I do have professors, and I know you went to college. I mean, spiritual warfare stuff is fascinating to me. And I don't know how much of it I buy into it completely, but I remember one professor said, if we could pull the veil back of what's really going on behind the scenes, even for 30 seconds, it would blow our minds, all of the stuff going on. So I do believe there is a devil. I do believe that we are tempted to do things, that there's this evil force, this evil thing in the world. But like I said, the only two examples we have of Satan specifically tempting anybody is Adam and Eve and Jesus. The rest of it we don't see. The other thing I think about the devil is tempting us individually is there's these omni statements that most people are familiar with, the omnis of God, omnipotent, which is all powerful, omniscient, which is God's all knowing, and omnipresent, which means he's everywhere all the time. The devil doesn't have any of that stuff as far as we know. The devil is not an equal to God. Does that make sense? I think we often say there's God on this side and the devil on this side. What's fascinating, especially people like end time stuff, when you read the book of Revelation, when the final battle comes between Jesus and Satan, and he throws him into the lake of fire, whether that's figurative or real, it's like a 2-second battle. Like, it's not even like this war. It's like literally Jesus rides on a horse and he casts everything out, and that's the end of the battle. And so I always tell people, just from a biblical understanding, Jesus, God, and the devil are not equals at all. If anything, we see from the Bible that Satan, a fallen angel, will be more like the archangel Michael or something like that, which again is no match from a biblical standpoint, no match for God or Jesus, which I know this is kind of weird stuff to talk about, but it's also fascinating to me at the same time. But no, I don't think the devil is equal to God. I'm not sure that he tempts us. To be honest with you, I'm not sure what to do with like the world of like where we all have these demons that are tempting us and all that. I'm not sure if I believe that or don't believe that. Again, sometimes the letdown of this, what does Jeremy think, is I really just don't know. And the more I study it, to be honest with you, the more questions I have about it. And sometimes the more confusing I have. But my general statement is I do believe there's a devil in some form. I just think we have a misunderstanding of what the devil actually is.
So are you talking as if the devil is a being, right? Like, or of some sort, or is it a manifest of all evil in general?
Yes.
Okay.
Both. Maybe.
Okay.
And that's the thing. We don't know. And I think everything that we try to say that we know, and I think it's the other thing is we're trying to understand things. I always tell people that about God. And I know I just said that God and Satan aren't equal, but it's our finite beings trying to understand something that's outside of our finite universe. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to understand something that's infinite in its understanding, and we just have a hard time with that. So we fill in a lot of blanks, and sometimes with misinformation. So is the devil physically a being? I tend to think that there is an actual devil, okay? But did the devil become something more through this force of evil? Does that make sense? Like, is he just the figurehead for something that's actually bigger? Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah, I agree.
And so it's like one of those things where it's like, is what Satan chose to do, if Satan, Lucifer, whatever named Azul, whatever names we want to give him, was an original thing.
Did you say Zool? Like
Azul.
from Ghostbusters?
Azul.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Zool from Ghostbusters. I was like, I didn't. That's something
No,
new.
Satan has all kinds of names. Yeah, the bright morning star is one of Satan's name. I mean, so whatever it is he, she, it originally, I do think it's encompassed a bigger idea of evil in this world.
So do you think that the devil or whatever this being that it's turned into, do they know the outcome of what is to happen? Like, do they know that this is coming around the corner? Like, do they know that? I'm just curious.
I don't know. They're not all knowing, omniscient,
right?
Like
okay,
God.
that's what I was asking.
I don't think they're all knowing. I do think one of the interesting ideas is when Satan tempts Jesus. Okay, Satan doesn't know how that's going to go. Does that make sense? And then I think the other thing, and this could be just me reading too many books but there is that scene that we talk about. It's not actually in the Bible, but we talk about is that scene where when Jesus is crucified, did Satan think that he had won the battle? Does that make sense?
Right.
He doesn't know what's coming next. And so I do think that's one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't think Satan is all knowing. I think whatever Satan is, evil force is it's trying to destroy what God loves. It's always what I tell people, like whatever it is, it's just trying to destroy what God loves. And if God loves us, then it's trying to destroy us and cause evil and chaos in the world.
Which is interesting because we know how it ends. So, right? I mean, in general,
we know how it ends. We don't.
We know that good will conquer evil, I guess.
Yeah, we know that at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I mean, does the devil know he's fighting a losing battle?
Right.
Yeah, but does that stop him from trying to take down as much carnage as he can? The other interesting thing and we're getting into a weird conversation here.
No, I love it.
Is one of the things that's fascinating to me about scripture is when the devil tempts Jesus, he refers to himself as being able to give him all the palaces of all the world. Jesus doesn't correct him. And doesn't say like basically that, no, you don't have dominion of this earth. Does that make sense? And I always thought that was a fascinating point that not a lot of people talk about is Jesus doesn't like say, oh, Satan, no, you're really not the prince of this world. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't do that. And so does Satan know he's fighting a losing battle? I mean, yeah, probably. Does he also know that he kind of has domain here. And like I said, that's again, is it a force or is it a person or a thing? Does that make sense? And I don't know. Again, a lot of I don't knows, but I do think it's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
So let's end this on a little bit of a fun note. What's your favorite Hollywood portrayal of the devil?
My favorite?
Yeah.
It's not a portrayal, but the Seinfeld episode where Putty becomes a Christian.
Oh, okay.
And at the end where they're getting the limo and it's the New York Devil. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. That like that whole episode where Putty becomes a Christian and they go to the priest and he's like, he tries to get Elaine to steal the neighbor's newspaper. And she goes, "Don't you care about me?" And he goes, "You're going to hell anyway. Why does it matter?" And it's just like this whole, and then like the end scene with the devil. So that's not really a betrayal, but that was my favorite Hollywood, like, taking on the devil. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In some ways, but that's a great episode.
What about you, Penny?
I really like the Bill and Ted. I guess it's The Bogus Journey is the one where they actually go to hell. And I was just fascinated with that as a kid. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So.
That's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
My favorite is Al Pacino in The
that's
Devil's
a good one.
Advocate.
That's a good one.
Ooh,
That's a really
that's
good
just
one.
how I think of Al Pacino, always as the devil.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was what Jeremy thought.
That's what Jeremy thought.
Okay, so before we get to our main topic, which I'm almost to a point where it's like, why do we need a main topic and a what does Jeremy think? They just kind of become, but I don't want the podcast to run short. So we have some things that have been going on here at Journey, going to tell you about. So we collected quite a few ways to help people this holiday season. We had run the Operation Christmas Child that presents a box of gifts to a child in need. And then we also collected some Thanksgiving bags to provide a meal to families who are in need here in Bullitt County. And we had a really good collection of all of those things. We had over 160 boxes for Operation Christmas Child given. And so that's incredible. Thank you for those. And then yesterday, actually, we recorded this on Tuesday. So on Monday, we had 73 meals given away to families here in the community that provided them with everything they needed for a Thanksgiving meal, all the food, the meat included. So that's awesome. Thank you so much if you contributed to that. And we're just so grateful that you felt so generous this holiday season. The next big thing we have coming up is called Grinchmas, and the dates for that are the 9th, 10th, and 11th of December. 9th, 10th, and 11th. And I just heard that we are going to make tickets available starting this Saturday, the 27th. And you can find that through Facebook, the Journey app, which we encourage you to download, social media. You can call the office if you need some help, and we'll do what we can to help you find that. Christmas Eve services, we think we've landed on some times here, and so we're going to go ahead and announce that. So we are going to do 3 Christmas Eve services across 2 different days. So the first day will be the 23rd, and that will be at 7 p.m. That's a Thursday. So 7 p.m. on the 23rd, and then on Christmas Eve itself, we will do 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. on the 24th and 7 p.m. on the 23rd. And
then an important detail of that, because we do the Christmas Eve services and we make them very similar to what we do on Sundays, the 26th, we will not have services. So the 25th is a Saturday, is Christmas. The 26th, we will not have services. We want you to enjoy that time with your family. We will make a video that we'll put out online that you can kind of follow along or whatever if you want to have like a celebration with your family. But we want you to take that time for our volunteers, our leaders, our staff, but really the people coming to Journey. Take that time, spend it with your family. Watch online if you want to. Go serve somebody. Do something good. Take them some, what's that stuff? Here we come, a wassailing. Take them some wassail, and just.
I thought you were going to reference like figgy pudding or something.
What is happening right now?
A wassail is a drink.
You never, here we come a wassailing among the fields of green. Here we come a wanderings affair to be seen. Love and joy come to you. And he's a wassel too.
I'm going to put him, I know, I was just thinking that. Let's put you up there.
I can play the harmonica too. Nobody knows that, but I'm actually a really good harmonica player, but nobody ever puts me on stage.
Oh. Well, you're on stage every single week.
Right.
I'm just going to bust it out one week.
You could literally play the harmonica anytime you wanted. So the last thing is we are rolling out starting, it's kind of been leaking out and small doses, but we are unveiling it officially. We are switching softwares here, which I know is a very exciting thing, from Planning Center to something called Church Community Builder, CCB for short. And if you are a volunteer at the church, if you're involved in the church in any way, this new software, it's all encompassing. It allows us to do all of our scheduling and planning and giving and all of that. And it's all available through the Journey app. So whereas you used to have to go to a different website or have a different app that would allow you to do this, you can now do it all in the Journey app. So we encourage you to download that. If you have an account, if you already had an account with Planning Center with us, it will have integrated, so you will be able to find that on there. But if you haven't, you can just create a brand new account, and we will get you set up for that. And we are going to be making that leap. So Planning Center is going away, and CCB is going live on December 15th. So it's a very busy month. We got a lot going on, and we're really excited about it. Okay, let's get into the main topic, and this is one that it was in the news recently. There was a political rally at a church in Texas, in San Antonio. It was John Hagee's church, and it was not a church service. It was just a political rally. And Michael Flynn, who was a general in the military, he has been known to share views that are conspiratorial and very publicly pledged allegiance to Q. He said that he thinks that America should be a one religion country, and that should be the Christian religion. His statement specifically was the following: if we are going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion. One nation under God and one religion under God. So what I want to talk about a little bit today is, as Christian people, how should we respond to this? Jeremy, what do you think?
These issues, and we've talked about this a little bit, and I've talked about it from the stage. Obviously, most people know that I don't get political. Most times I do get political. I end up apologizing because if you give me enough time to talk, I'm going to make you feel stupid. And that's just, it's not a good thing. I'm not like bragging about that. But so I try just not to get into those conversations because it's not healthy. But, I always say this: I love America. I don't want to live anywhere else. I do think it's the greatest country to ever exist. But it's a country that exists, that we are citizens of. My first allegiance is to the kingdom of God. I think we've talked about that before. These conversations concern me a lot. And part of it is because, first of all, just historically, there have been other countries that have deemed themselves Christian nations and and it didn't work out well for them. In fact, our country, if you study it, was started because people left a country that had made one church their kind of,
absolutely.
Does that make sense? And so for people just to not understand our own history, the other thing is freedom of religion, which was the idea of our founding fathers, was for all religions. It wasn't, not all of them were Christians. And I think people want to debate that all the time. And I'm like, man, give me 20 minutes. I can show you how much of it was not based necessarily on Christianity. Christian principles, yes. But a lot of those Christian principles just came out of Western thinking. They weren't making those the principles because they came out of the Bible. They were making those the principles because that's what the Western world was being formed on. Does that make sense? And so
I agree.
I think that if you study historically, it has not worked well for the countries. And I'm not even talking that it's worked well for the countries as far as like development. I'm talking about from the Christian standpoint. Most of those countries that have taken what he's talking about doing, you can't even find churches. And if they do churches there, they're dead. And that is the concern for me, is ignoring historically what has happened in other countries that have tried to do this.
Well, also an interesting aspect of that is that in a lot of these countries that have quote unquote state churches, the role of pastor, it's a state funded position. And a lot of the people who fill those roles are not believers. They are filling a position. And so your pastor could literally be an atheist and, offer, moral guidance, I suppose.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what the end goal of that would be, right? Because if, let's say that we did turn into a country that was all Christian, did he think that was going to solve all of the problems in America? Because
I think that's the implication. Yeah. That
like,
if we were
no
all
one's going to murder
Christian
anymore. No one's going to steal. No one's going to, politics are going to be great. And I mean, come on now, seriously.
Yeah,
it just makes Christians look really bad because that's not how I raise my children. I'm sure that's not how you raise your children. The idea that we love everyone because Jesus loved everyone, and we treat others with respect, and we value who they are as a person because Jesus loves them just as much as he loves you. So I'm just really confused by this.
I think one of the bigger concerns for me, and I'm going to say this and probably regret it, but I'll just say it, is the insistence by so many people to align Christianity with one particular party. And I think what he's saying in this is we need to make it a Christian nation, which is really saying we need to make it our party's nation and the way we value things. And I'll be honest with you, when I look at both party systems, first of all, I think both party systems are incredibly flawed. I think the whole system is flawed, to be honest with you, to some degree. But I think that I see some things, and I think one of the things I want to say, and I can back this one up, I don't regret this one, is the Bible is very clear there are no Christian nations. There is no Israel of old. They're just not. And, there's one kingdom, and the kingdom that we see over and over again that Jesus is talking about is not a national kingdom in the way we think of it. And it's definitely not a kingdom the way that we think of kingdoms. I mean, it's constantly referring to itself as like this upside down kingdom, this not of this world kingdom, this where the first shall be last, the last shall be first type of place. One of my favorite passages is when Jesus talks about this idea that there's two gods you can serve. And according to Jesus, the two gods you can serve are God or money. And I think it's interesting because I always tell people we're a capitalistic society. We chose long ago what God we were serving. And you could argue with me all day what you think about that, but let's look at what's going on. And when Jesus talks about that, I don't think he's being cute. I think he's being factual. I think he's saying you have a choice here. You can serve God or you can chase after him. We talked about this greed, this thing. And I think as a country a long time ago, we chose what we were serving, and I think there's still a lot of good in our country. There's freedom and democracy. And, what's the quote about democracy? It's the worst form of government. It happens to be better than everybody else's, there's a lot of good that comes out of what America's doing and has done. And again, I think it's the greatest country. But this line of thinking that I'm seeing, to me, is just becoming incredibly dangerous. It's becoming toxic, to use a word we're using recently, and it's dividing more than it's uniting. And I think that's the scary part.
I don't know. As a Christian, I want to live with people who are not like me because I think that that's what builds empathy in our nation and understanding. And a lot of things are not just about religion. It's a cultural aspect too, right? Because a lot of things that we enjoy, people don't realize that was a melting pot of a bunch of different cultures and religions that have come into the country in general. So to me, this is...
Well, and I think the other thing to say is not every Christian in the country, and especially in the world, but let's talk specifically about our country, is a white Republican.
Right.
I could take you to 25 different churches right now that everybody at that rally would think was not a church, and they're just as Christian as we are. Does that make sense? And so I think that's the bigger thing is it's just like, it has to look this way. It has to, and I'm like, man, there's so many expressions of Christianity out there that even becomes a whole thing. Okay. So which version of Christianity are we saying our Christian nation is? Because there's a bunch of different types of understanding and, kind of ideas that come out of that and different expressions of Christianity around the world, all still celebrating Jesus as Savior and that God is who he is and says he is who he is. And so I think it just becomes a complicated conversation. And to me, it's just, it's scary.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
I agree.
And what I, based on who he has shown himself to be, Michael Flynn's version of Christianity is more about having power and dominion over other people, which isn't Christianity at all.
I mean, it's the exact opposite of what Jesus says.
Yeah.
I mean, just verse by verse, I can show that to you.
And I one of the things that happened at this rally was that they broke out in a chant of "Let's go, Brandon," which, if you don't know what that reference is, I'm not going to spell it out for you here. But it's not a good chant, and it's in reference to our current president. And whatever your feelings are about our current president, to chant that is unchristian. It's unchristian behavior.
It makes the rest of us look bad. So stop.
Yeah, and so you don't have to like the guy. You can say I didn't vote for him.
Right.
He's not my president, whatever. but to chant that chant, once you know what it really means, which it really means, screw Joe Biden, but within much harsher terms,
right?
That is un-Christ-like behavior.
And the thing this is not a sad thing. This is the thing that drives me crazy about where we're at as a country. Is all of the people that are chanting that are the same people that got so upset when other people were saying things about their particular president or president they liked or candidate they liked. And it's like the hypocrisy of it all. It really is that we think it's okay to say this stuff about our president, which I get into biblical things about where the Bible talks about like honoring the king. Well, think about who the king was. The king would have been Caesar at that time, who was persecuting them. And the Bible goes out of its way to say to bring honor to this person, even though he's persecuting us.
Right.
So that's a biblical concept right there. So if you're saying these things and chanting these things, regardless of your feeling, you're already stepping outside of what the biblical writers, specifically Paul, who ended up losing his life. I mean, I get emotional about it because the people that want to say that this is a Christian thing happening, I really don't think they understand the understanding of the word Christian.
Right. I totally agree. Because the whole honoring the king who's persecuting you, it's part of that whole upside down kingdom thing. Like in a normal kingdom, the person's persecuting us, let's go to war. But in Christianity, it's no, love them, and honor them and respect them.
I'm totally grateful for anyone in politics because I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm totally all for you not liking who the president is.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Every freedom.
But I agree. I agree with all of that stuff. At the same time, it's like, okay, this to use the Christian part of it is the part I think that drives me crazy. And, I think that's the beauty of our country, but also kind of the dangerous thing is we have this freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but we need, and it goes with that. Yes, we are given rights, but with right comes responsibility.
Right.
And I think that's where we're missing it is that, yes, we have rights and they're greater than any other country that's ever existed, but there's responsibility with those rights. And we have to be civil and sensible and smart about this. And that's outside the Christian flag.
Yeah.
That's just as people living in this country. And to throw in the Christian thing, there's a whole nother set of kind of ideas that come out of that we have to take a look at.
Right. And so kind of one of the questions here that I want to ask is, as Christians, how should we engage with politics? Because I do think it's okay for Christian people to engage in politics. The question is, how do we engage in politics in a way that honors Christ without trying to use Christ as a weapon of or a tool to gain power and authority over people? So I don't know. What do you guys think? How do we as Christians? How should we, or should we? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we shouldn't engage.
We stop and we listen because we all have something to say, and we live in this country. We're all going to be different, and as Christians, it's just stop and listen, even if you don't agree. Like that should be the golden rule for everyone in general.
Yeah. I think one of the things I do want to say is Jesus' idea of kingdom is different, but Jesus was definitely political. I mean, like when he the fig tree and the olives, like when he makes examples of those in the Bible, those are deeply Roman things that he's kind of bringing out. And so that's a whole nerdy thing that I can talk for another 45 minutes about. So Jesus makes political statements, but his political statements are not about one party versus the other, or necessarily even about the Caesar. It's about the kingdoms, and it's about the idea of the powers of this world versus the powers of what he says. So I think Christians can engage in politics. I think Christians can run for politics. I think you can even vote to some degree based on certain issues that you care about deeply, that I think God also cares about. I think it's the villainizing of the other side. It's the being irrational about it. It's the hate. That's the stuff where you're crossing the line of what Christ, I mean, the hardest and probably truest thing that Jesus ever tells us is to love our enemy. And we just ignore that. And so if you view this president or this political party, and I don't care what side as your enemy, well, as you're a Christian, Jesus says you're supposed to love those people and pray for those people and do good for those people, and it's like, do we just I don't know. So it just becomes this thing. So I think you can engage in politics. I think it's the nastiness of politics that is the concern. And as Christians, we have to be better than that and just not allow that to happen. And so I think that's where we can engage in politics. You can vote, you can go to rallies, you can vote for people that I probably wouldn't vote for or endorse, and that's fine. That's your right to do that. But just be careful when you do it. And especially the words you use, the language you use, the things you post, and more importantly, how you treat the people that don't agree with you about those things says everything.
Yeah. And one of, the last thing that I just kind of want to mention for a second is you can't talk about Michael Flynn without also talking about QAnon. And I think that it's important because people see QAnon and a lot of people, what their response to be who believe and adhere to that is, well, no, you don't understand. These people are evil. It's a cabal of evil people who are drinking the blood of children. Like, these are the things that people in QAnon actually believe. And what I think it's important for us from a historical standpoint to point out, QAnon is just another form of Gnosticism. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what Gnosticism is, it's the heretical belief that the truth is not readily available, that you have to go to a special source who has special revelation of truth, and only the people that have gotten that truth are enlightened and know the way. And that's all that QAnon is claiming to be.
Yeah,
is
100%.
It's just
and it's not new, and not even just Gnosticism. I mean, that pattern has existed in every generation and every country and ideology. So 100%, you're right on that.
Yeah. And so if you read QAnon's posts or whatever, and you find them to be compelling arguments, I just encourage you to check the fact sources there for those. Check the track record of things that have transpired, that have been claimed. And if you really want to watch a great documentary about the whole QAnon phenomenon, and it's called Into the Storm, and it's on HBO.
HBO Max. Yeah, I watched
it.
And
it's phenomenal, and it pretty much identifies who Q is. And the guy's just a con artist.
Yeah.
And so
I think most people, I think that's the thing. People don't want to look into where this information is coming from.
Yeah.
And here's what I also say. I will say, I'm not going to say that there's not evil people in charge of things and all that stuff. And I'm not going to say there's even people in our country that are in high positions that aren't evil. And that's not but I always say too, and I know it's going to be like a Jesus-y moment, but like, I really do believe in that idea of like, okay, before I'm going to like attack you, I got to take a look at myself and say like, okay, is everything that I'm doing, before I'm going to call you evil, before I'm going to attack your belief system, like, is there anything in me that needs to be dealt with? And I think if more Christians did that from a political standpoint of saying, yeah, there's some messed up stuff with the left or the right or whatever side you tend to lean on. Okay, but take a look at your side, take a look at your leadership, take a look at yourself really, and say, okay, are our hands clean before we're going to start attacking other people? And I think if more people did that, there would be a lot more civilly. I just ruined that, but yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I think that just follow the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and just stick with that. We need to like definitely say something positive at the end of this, because I feel like
I think that's a pretty good way to end things, especially because we recorded and we released this. We were gonna just wait until we got back from Thanksgiving break, but we thought, people are traveling, and why wouldn't they want to listen to our velvety, dulcet tones
talk about politics?
That's right.
And if you didn't like anything that we just said, that's fine. Just go eat some pumpkin pie. Like,
that's right.
It's all good now.
That's right.
We still love you, and hopefully you still love us.
And that is the way it should be, brothers and sisters in Christ.
Holding hands,
singing Kumbaya, saying agree to disagree, but I still love you. Right. We will see you in a couple weeks. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for listening.